Well, a city, you can argue, can be broken down and rebuilt. Or, and that is usually the case, a new center can be built just outside the historic city on the pristine or illiterate ground, which still can be fully adapted to the current requirements or functionalities. However, it is impossible for a human brain to clean up, remove old brain cell connections and start over again. And if it were possible to take the old brain out and put a new brain in, it would be highly undesirable, the murder of all memories, knowledge and skills. However, in devising education for lifelong learning, the altered, diminishing learning capacity of the older brain must be taken into account. And that's exactly my point here. Too easily we expect the elderly to build and use, as it were, a mega storehouse in a city that has arisen with warehouses and canals, or with tablets and smartphones instead of with pencil and pen. Education in the elderly must focus on finding the connection between the new requirements and the present structures. If people have built good accommodations, they can assimilate many processes, including new processes, almost without having to accommodate. But if people have formed less good accommodations, as is also often the case, they will not be able to keep up with many changes in the world. Think of packing the trucks on carts on the edge of the historic center. Learning new things is possible sometimes, but one has to be relatively illiterate. For example, playing the violin, if you have never played a stringed instrument, may help, because it forces your brain to adapt again, even when you're very old at age. This is exactly where the metaphor with the city is flawed. In our brain, we often have lifelong land for free. In short, try to find your illiteracy, even in your old age. Even in elderly, we can sometimes be absolute beginners. Biodeterminism. Since time immemorial, adults are responsible for their own actions. Both our legal systems and our own judgments are based on this. For example, it brings us into turmoil if someone violates the traffic rules. However, neuropsychological research shows that people often base their decision on other aspects than they think they do. For example, soccer goalkeepers decide in which direction they will dive on the basis of information from the penalty taker's gaze and movement behavior, the position of the non-kicking leg and the viewing direction, as I said. However, they are convinced that they base their dive on continuously monitoring the ball, which is impossible. The time to process the image of the ball and base the motor output on that is simply too short. Biodeterminists argue that human freedom is strongly determined by biological structures, especially the brain. Popular scientific titles go to show, we are our brains, free will does not exist. If a traffic offender is overtaking on the wrong side of the motorway, activity in the caudate nucleus preludes the moment we feel anger. However, the fact that we do not always know on which aspects we base our choices does not mean that we have no will to choose at all. A keeper, for instance, can also do nothing or always jump in the same direction, etc. In fact, this is not an argument that there is no free will. Biodeterministic reasoning is not only naive, but certainly potentially dangerous. But why? It tempts people to uplift someone who shows deviant behavior from second to third person into someone we can talk about instead of talk with. In fact, this is what classical psychiatry has been doing for centuries. Of course, some people are not accountable, for example due to severe intellectual disability. Even children are not yet fully responsible for their actions. But if someone is sad for a long time and doesn't want to live, a psychiatrist will come up with a cause. Diagnosis, like depression, for example. Making the doctor responsible for the condition and the treatment, and all thinkable consequences, even euthanasia, if the treatment doesn't work. This way of thinking, deviant emotion or behavior is an indication of a disease which can be treated, can be applied to many thinkable disorder. But even more dangerous, it can also be applied to any religious, political and artistic expression or belief that we do not understand yet. It must be in the brain. Is there a doctor in the room? Many futurologists present the future as an unequivocal road in one direction, towards a technological salvation, in which man is supported and relieved as much as possible by smart technology. Salvation shines on the horizon, like the gold at the end of the rainbow. But technology both dictates and globalizes, making many people more alike. Anyone looking for a different way is at risk of becoming a third person, someone who isn't talked with, but talked about. Biological determinism rears its head. Something in the brain must be responsible. Again, is there a doctor in the room? Why are some facts told so little? We are not on the way to a technological sanctuary. To be human, people do not necessarily need smart technology. Development is not unambiguous from bad to better. Afterwards, many good solutions turn out to have substantial dark sides, which, of course, were not visible in advance. People have a free will. Therefore, we are responsible for our own actions and choices. Expectations to this rule are very rare. Again, although we choose on the basis of other things than we think, it remains our choices. Imagine letting go of the principle of our own responsibility, which underlies our legal system. We would certainly end up in a dystopia. The brain is important. A car does not drive without a motor, but the purpose of a journey is not anchored in the engine. As long as we are judged on what we do or don't do in the world, running away on time in a conflict, for example, we are not our brains. And we will have to continue managing with our free will. We are the essence of our own lives. We cannot outsource that, neither to technology nor to biodeterminists. No one can go down the same river twice. There's never a way back. There's only progress. Our art of living is to embrace progress, even if we are burdened by the heaviness or the lightness of being. Without looking back, or at least without fossilizing, degeneration happens when the present is forced to form into the past. When the current life state must be a petrified copy of what once was. What is controlled by homesickness is petrified. What is petrified loses the direct relationship with the process of the ever-changing reality. Reality itself is process. To think that you know reality means that you have petrified it, so that you have lost everything you thought you had. Sometimes this is easier thought than lived. Our brains feed on the repetition that it creates itself, patterns. Morning appears when night disappears, day disappears and night appears. All this to infinity. The same water, the same river, the same day, the same trains, the same cars, etc. Even if a car, for example, is the same, it is not the same car the next time you see it. If it was, maintenance would not be necessary. Something that is really immutable does not exist. And if it could exist, it would also prove to be completely useless. Something that does not change cannot change anything. Brain constructions, though certainly changeable, stand in between an ever-changing reality and more or less petrified images of it. Hence, in the Bible story, Lot's wife's fate was to fall into a salt pillar, to coincide with the fossilized past, to which she looked back in anger, disrupt yourself and see new opportunities as a child. Piles of sand. In the context of an introduction into data science, I ask my students to imagine the differences between the actual world and the thinkable world in which every job or function would have been occupied by the best person in the world. What would be different? Everything, the students say. For instance, all famous names would be different. If you turned on the radio, there would be music from names that we never heard of. Probably even the grandmasters of the past, Dostoevsky, Bach, would not be read or heard anywhere. And we would certainly not be listening to you as our professor. Otherwise, the world would be so different, they continue. The question is whether there would be radio stations, publishing houses, etc. Well, I have to admit, they're probably right. Our world, like every actual reality, can be seen as a specific actualization of an infinite number of possible realities. Every realization, successful or unsuccessful, is based on being in the right time or the wrong time, at the right place or the wrong place. Potentially better and also worse realizations as a result of better or worse candidates, artists or professionals who are not at the right time, because there's no vacancy or no stage or whatever, logically a majority will not be heard, seen or honored. In my lecture, it's now time to introduce calculus, the mathematics of change. Imagine an hourglass with an infinite stream of grains of sand. It comes in, it flows in, and on the ground a mountain is created. Over time, the mountain is so high and steep that it collapses and it broadens. And then the pattern repeats and repeats, although the shifts of collapsing and widening and growing require more and more inflowing grains and thus time. The sand grains that flow in and thus form the mountain are all equal, but the grains of sand that cause the shift are seen as Michael Jackson or Hitler or Dostoevsky, at the right time, at the right place. Of course, people, unlike grains of sand, can make a lot of good or bad contributions in the human world. On the basis of the linear influx, the grains of sand, the pile of sand slowly grows continuously, until it cannot rise any higher, at which point the mountain changes discontinuously. The whole pattern repeats itself, although each cycle, oscillation, takes more time each cycle. A complex system emerges. A model of such system is the Lorentz oscillator. Important is that there are linear and continuous phases and also non-linear discontinuous phases, the shifts. Freely translated, a new genre, the Beatles for example, becomes more difficult to transform into an innovation of the genre after each cycle. Back to my lecture. Fortunately, the students are also slightly wrong. Every person is unique, and there is something for every person, of which he or she is the best of everyone in the entire world. It's nice if it's something that is recognized as a performance field or task space, for example running 100 meters, being able to sing beautifully or painting in a realistic way. For recognized performance fields, courses, the standard, exams, diagnostics, tests, etc. are already present. But for many achievements in areas that are not yet there, or that are not yet recognized, this does not apply. Occasionally, someone can enrich a field with new areas, realizations that perfectly match his or her special talents. Think of Alan Turing, perhaps not the best mathematician, but he brought a completely new form of mathematics, informatics, algorithm, to growth. But for everyone, you are the best in the world to look exactly as you do. All of us have been at the right time, at the right place, at various times. For that, we are so much more than just our brains. We are at least our technology, our psychology, and last but not least, our unique cascade of coincidence.
So fake promises we make, it just hurts.